From the Maya to the North Pole.
"20 years ago, scientists alarmed us that we were losing the balance between the temperature and the humidity of our atmosphere, but we did not care to listen. We have created an energy crisis, even though we have renewable energy at our disposal, and now we're facing a new threat unless we move towards a different lifestyle, better than the present one." I am Vida Amor de Paz, an environmentalist, explorer, and adventurer. I will travel through the exuberant Maya Biosphere Reserve, where there are many deforested areas, but where we still find others that may still be saved. Finally, I expect to reach the North Pole.
If we affect the Arctic through clearing the rainforests, what will the Arctic send us back? If the Maya fell apart as a result of their excesses, could that happen to us as well?
The Maya civilization was a majestic culture and the most powerful that settled in Central America 1,000 years before Christ.
It was a vibrant culture that suddenly disappeared. Dr. Kerben asks if we can conclude through comparisons of what happened previously with the Maya. Dr. Hansen explains that the Maya people went to excess in the use of materials for their construction. They started to build their walls thicker and thicker each time to show off their power.
There were hundreds of buildings on this site and dozens of other structures in the area. Let's see just one of these buildings. Constructing it required the clearing of 1,600 acres of forest without leaving a single tree standing. Dr. Hansen asks, what had made them leave their architecture, their monumental buildings, their crossroads, their complex systems of water collection, and their monumental platforms built in their cities? This was all working when they abandoned it forever. Now, the evidence suggests that it was because they cut their forests and ruined their agricultural capacities. They could not go on maintaining their populations.
Aside from the cyclic and natural factors such as marine currents, volcanic activity, and solar flares, excess was a key factor that led their civilization to extinction. But this time, the overexploitation of natural resources is on a planetary scale. And if it isn't stopped in time, humanity may be at stake. From Guatemala City, I reached Miami in 2.5 hours. I crossed the Atlantic for long hours bound to London. Then, after 5 hours of waiting at the airport, I flew to Oslo, Norway. From Oslo, I took off to a small city named Tromsø. From Tromsø, I flew to my last stop that was the gate to the pole, Longyearbyen. I was about to enter upon a unique special adventure. The adventure of the schooner Tara was to know the consequences that the melting of the Arctic would have for the rest of the world. For the second time, we're trying to get to the Tara. Everything is in place to be able to do it. Since it snowed here in Longyearbyen and is possibly snowing over there also, the ice will be much thicker, and that will allow us to land. So we're leaving! Yes! Nos vamos! Our landing on an ice cap of a little more than 1 meter in depth was a total success. Everything at the pole was an adventure, but I could not lose sight of the answers that I had come to find. If the climate change of today was similar to the one that led the Maya to collapse, today I knew that these changes in the ice cover were not limited to the oceans.
The ice cap of Greenland contains almost 10% of the glaciers of the world, but it is losing more than 100 billion tons of ice per year. This region is an immense ice cube that regulates the global climate. It is 1,600 kilometers in length, 650 kilometers wide, and 3 kilometers deep at its center. If it melts completely, the level of the ocean could rise 6 meters on the entire planet, with the additional aggravation of hurricanes.
This wasn't captive, since the melting of Greenland would affect us all. But the Arctic presented another problem.
The melting of the Arctic ice won't make the level of the oceans rise any further, since it is water that has always floated on top of the sea. But the melting of Greenland will, since it brings cold, fresh water that travels directly towards the Atlantic conveyor. The Atlantic conveyor starts from the south of the equator, moves through the Gulf of Mexico, and absorbs heat from the tropics, moving at high speed by the U.S. coast, reaching Great Britain and Northern Europe. The current transports the equivalent of 1 million generators of heat. The melting of Greenland flows directly into the circulation that regulates the planet's climate. This fresh water, mixing with the salty tropical water, could produce a shutdown in the system and therefore drive Europe into an ice age. The forecasts of a sea level rise of 1.6 millimeters per year could fall short, since the retreat of the ice sheet in the Arctic is 500,000 square kilometers per year.
But if the scientific community said long before that the Arctic would melt in the summers of the year 2100, and now it is happening 90 years earlier, are we still on time to not suffer a collapse similar to the one of the Maya?
Are we in time to avoid a new ice age or a devastating inferno?
Our temperature has increased to 0.7 degrees Celsius, while at the North Pole it reaches 2.1 degrees more. That's the reason why the sea level may rise between 1 to 6 meters in the following decades.
If this happens, Latin America and the Caribbean may be in trouble, particularly flooding Cuba, Dominican Republic, and other islands. Central America could be one of the most affected regions on the planet, turning 40% drier. Immense tropical rainforests could disappear, and if this should occur, there would be more drought, hunger, and emigration would be the order of the day. In Mexico, Chiapas, Yucatan, and Quintana Roo are at stake, as well as Tamaulipas, Veracruz, Tabasco, and Campeche. In Guatemala, the east is in danger, along with Izabal, Petén, and the entire Pacific coast. In El Salvador, Usulután. In Honduras, the Gulfs of Honduras and Fonseca. 50% of Belize could end up underwater. And in Nicaragua, 30% could flood from the Atlantic and the Pacific. In Costa Rica, parts of Guanacaste, Alajuela, and Heredia. In Panama, the National Park of Darien, San Blas, Colón, Los Santos, and Herrera, followed by Colombia, Venezuela, French Guiana, Suriname, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay.
Now that we know that we are affecting the Arctic due to fossil fuel consumption and for the clearing of our rainforests, what will we do? Now that we know what the Arctic will send us back, what will we do?
It isn't science fiction, it's happening now. If we act without delay, without selfishness, and with respectful actions towards the planet, we could still change our destinies. Let's learn to live in harmony with Mother Nature and cherish the ancient Maya wisdom. If we do so, we'll be ready for a new humanity.